Well, hi, Miss on the rebroadcast, the replay, then I just wanted to let you know, thank you so much for being here. We really value anybody that, comes to the broadcast and just joins in, even if they're just watching. So just know that you are of value. I know a lot of viewers have told me, gosh, I listened to you for absolute years in some cases, without ever making a comment. And that's fine. Hi there, Jody. Good to see you. Um, because the main thing is, hopefully, we take one step at a time towards doing what we want to do, whether that's get healthier, whether that is, in my case, downsizing, whether you want to. One step at a time to coping better with what's going on in your life. All these things are important. Hi, Linda. And so to me, it's like we really value the fact that you are in the neighborhood. Now, if you haven't watched a broadcast before, just know that what we do is by the way, signs of my downsizing here. Um, what we do is we start off just by having a bit of a chit chat while people get in, get all settled in, get comfy chairs and things, and then we will actually get on to the subject. And the subject for today is twofold. Number one, we're talking about one step at a time. As I said, we move a step forward every week if we can. And then secondly, we're going to be doing some case study work on trauma, post-traumatic stress trauma in particular. Isn't that pretty, that little bit there? It's right there. The joys of wearing headphones. All right. So let us start by just getting our screens ready. And forgive me because for some reason it's not possible to do this before I actually start the broadcast. Or if it is, I haven't found out how to do it yet. That would be also another point. Uh, so while we get that sorted, which we nearly are, there we go. I just wanted to check how everybody's doing. So, Linda, how was your week? And Jody, how was your week? And while you're typing, I am going to just do some thoughts and prayers for some of our viewers. As some of you know, Erin's had a really tough time over the last few months, and we hope just continue to have her in our thoughts and prayers while she waits for her results. She's waiting for results to find out whether, she can keep her um, function numbers down so that she can go home. Oh no, actually, so she can have an operation and then hopefully go home. So she's been really stressed about this for some time, and my heart goes out to her. Lauren, for those of you who know Lauren, for some peculiar reason, suddenly she's got some blood pressure issues going on. And I think it's, well, I don't know. I'll wait for the experts to do, but I actually have part of my discussion today is a story about her that she has given me permission to talk about in terms of a case study. Jody cracked a tooth this week. Really. And if you can believe it, Jody, how are you doing? I think the good news about it, yeah, what happened to Jody was that she cracked this tooth. Luckily, praise God, luckily she didn't have any pain from it. I managed to get an appointment with the dentist. And for those of you who don't know, Jody is not very mobile, so for her to get an appointment, to go to an appointment, requires a lot of coordination, a special van to transport her, and all sorts of things. So, this is no small thing when she goes out to an appointment. So she gets all the way. First of all, being Jody, she's very fastidious about these things. She phoned up first and double checked everything and let them know what her, carrier was and everything else and blah, 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 yeah, all that stuff. So then she gets to the appointment and the receptionist tells her, well, you're not covered. So, you've got to pay us this much if you want us to do anything. Now, Jodie's point, and I understood her frustration. Jodie's point was, why didn't you tell me that before I ordered a special van, before, I wasted all this time? Hi, Becca. Good to see you. And Becca, please give us an update if you can, because you are 2 away at the moment. So by the time you finish typing it, we will be ready for that. Hi, Trip. Good to see you. Yes, this is after a 2-hour wait, as Jodie so rightly says. Hang on a second, people. Excuse me. I guess I didn't take my antihistamine this morning, which means I didn't take my other meds either. All right. Anyway, so Jodie, best of luck, and keep us informed about what's happening. Kerry got a new job, right? That's correct. And we wish her all the best with that. And the biggest news, I guess, for her is that that the man in her life is home, so she's happy. Oh, that's wonderful, Becca. Becca's saying, for those of you watching us on the replay and who know Becca, Becca is starting to watch training videos for her new job. What are you going to do, Becca? That's awesome. I'm so proud of you. Yeah, that's huge. I love it that today we can, have so much online that we can train before we get a job. Oh, that is wonderful. You know something? Blah, 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 blah. Beth, all right? Beth also got a job at a dollar store or a Dollar General, a dollar type store, let's put it that way. So that's amazing. Well done. That, something? That will keep your mind occupied, Becca. You know what I mean? It's like, really stay in the moment. I am so proud of you. Big round of applause. I know it's been a difficult time for you, and any step you take forward, I'm going to add you to the list here when we do our steps forward. So let's do that. And that's right now. So Jodie, how's the latte foamer doing? When do you actually start, Becca? Just so that I get an idea. Yeah, I always think, starting a new job is is always just a little stressful, but it's only for a day or two. After a week, you go, oh, gosh, I can't believe I didn't know this. Oh, won't be until after the 4th of July. Okay, gosh, that's coming up fast, isn't it? All right. So now then, just a word of input for everybody. If you're new to the broadcast and happen to be watching, first of all, thank you. Please subscribe. There's a bell here, probably close to my beautiful picture on the top right-hand corner there. And that will let you know every time I'm about to broadcast. And please make sure that you follow DearMamaSal, as it said, on Facebook and on Twitter. And the reason for that is because that is where I I use Facebook as a update, if we need thoughts and prayers for anybody, or if we need anybody, it's like our little newsletter page. So just make sure you're subscribed there, and obviously advance warning of any broadcast that we're doing. All right. So, yes, and as Jody so rightly says, if you want to be on our mailing list for special discounts and things and promotions, we haven't actually put any up. So maybe Jody can give me a reminder on that one. My mind's been a little bit occupied on various things. But if you don't think that you are subscribed onto that yet, please write to me at dearmamasal@gmail.com and write in the subject, yes to the list. I just need somewhere in writing that you actually wanted to be on the list. It's all to do with these new regulations. All right. So before we get on to the main topic, let me just give a quick time check here for Jody. It's 10:15. That's not the time. It's 10 minutes and 15 seconds into the broadcast. All right. So we're going to start with talking about one step at a time. Last week, we did some really good work on talking about just taking one step in the right direction. Now, the subject came up because I procrastinate. Does anybody relate to that? I procrastinate quite well, and I had this one corner of the house that I have not really done very much with, and I needed to get it cleaned up. And I have until Sunday to do that because I think that's when I actually made the commitment. But I had an area that I have been putting all the stuff that needs to be sorted through and probably shredded. Does that make sense? I just had one place where whenever I find a box of paper, I just put it in that place. And I must admit that I have kept my commitment on that. I have done, I think, nearly an hour's worth of that. And I think I committed to doing 30 minutes. And I've done over an hour as far as I know. So I'm proud of myself for that. And I am waiting for Debbie. Oh, Chip, how did you do with yours? Because you also were on the list. I've done a video of the before and after of the pile, just so you guys can see. And I had hoped to get that video up already, but I had a bad day yesterday. So, both Debbie and Chip said they also needed to get some shredding done. So I'm just waiting to hear from them as to how it went. Now, I still need to pack some boxes, and that's my task for tomorrow. Saturday is my me day, and it's also my take a major step forward in downsizing day. And just while we are on this subject, does anybody need any support on anything that they are procrastinating about? So, I find for some reason, if you are brave enough to call for support, it's amazing that, hopefully you'll get something done. So what does Chip say? Okay, so Chip, am I allowed to talk about that? I just like to just check on that before I do it publicly. I mean, I know that the people on the feed can see this, just so that you know, when I release this video as a live feed, as a replay rather, I will stop the chat so that people can't read what people said. Okay, so Chip committed to also doing some shredding this week, and she said that when I asked how did she do, she said horrible. I managed to gather the bags. That's the bags of things that need to be shredded. But then got into other boxes and reorganizing it a little. This week was tough for me. Okay, so does anybody relate to that you actually really don't want to do this task enough that your mind keeps taking you away from it? All right, suddenly you got to reorganize the whole house or whatever. So, Chip, that's why I say I only need to do 10 minutes. Because if I can just, and 10 minutes makes it pretty difficult to ignore. All right. So I really recommend that. Just say to yourself, if you've got a stopwatch on your phone or on your watch or whatever, I just need to do 10 minutes. That's all. And you'll be amazed once you start, it gets a lot easier. And what I did, just so that you know, Chip, is that I start by having I start by having three things in front of me, and I'm sorting a lot of stuff that is not just paper stuff, it's folders and all sorts of things. So just understand this. I have a garbage bin beside me, I have a recycling bin beside me, and then over here, actually, I have my shredder. And so I pick up a piece of paper, I look at it, and I go, shred. And then I pick up the next one. Oh, sorry, I have another basket to my right, which is I want to keep this. And so then I just literally, my first 10 minutes is just sorting things into those different containers. Does that make sense? It actually works really well because it lowers the pile. And then what I do is when I finished all of that, then I shred what is in the shredding bucket. So if you know everything in the bag is to be shredded, that's the easiest part. I would put on some headphones. Think about this. I'd put on some headphones and listen to some beats. I think that's what they call it. Some tunes from my day. I'd say, okay, fine, let me work this out. 10 minutes is 3 songs, really. Maybe 4. And that's all I have to do is just sing along for 4 songs and shred while I do it. And by the way, Jody and I will tell you, less is quicker. Jamming up the shredder just takes a lot of time. All right. Is there anybody else who is procrastinating about something that would like would like to be held accountable? What I found is if you hold yourself accountable to us, you are more likely to get it done. And Chip, we're not letting you off the hook now, just so that you know. Yeah, that's why we're here, Chip. We're here to make it possible. All right. This is about, I don't care if next week you tell me you got distracted again. Eventually you're going to get so peed off with it that you're going to go, I don't want to have to report that one more time. Jody's saying, I know that, Jody, from something you told me earlier. Jody's broken more than one shredder. The trick with shredding is less actually is more. Yeah, Chip, you understand, we want to help you that much. Does that make sense? And we know that if you know that every broadcast I'm going to be asking, have you done any yet? You you either will stop being a viewer, which I don't think you're going to do, or else you're going to just on principle do it. And then you're going to go, why didn't I do this earlier? By the way, Chip, if it makes you feel any better, at about midnight last night, I was cleaning out a cupboard. It doesn't really matter when you do it, well, unless you've got people in the house, in which case it does. But I literally was cleaning out a cupboard last night at around about midnight, and it looks so good. I'll take a picture for you. All right, so let us move on. Chip, was it you that asked me about anxiety type stuff and so forth? I know one of you is very interested in doing this sort of work, but it's like at least one of you, obviously. But I wanted to talk a little bit about PTSD. And for those of you who don't know what that is, you've probably heard the term. It is post-traumatic stress disorder. And I just want to make sure that you all know that I am not a medical person. I don't have fancy bits of paper. I am telling you this from my own personal research and from my own experience. And I just want to make sure you're quite clear on that. But what I did want to do is to sort of get an idea so that maybe I could explain to you what the difference is between something that is just a memory, and we all have memories of stuff that went on in our lives that weren't necessarily pleasant, right? Can you all think of something in your life that isn't necessarily the most fun thing that ever happened to you? But that is totally different from reliving the trauma. And if you can imagine it, it's like when you relive an event, and it's like somebody started the movie, and you're not only watching it, but you are reliving it. And that's the best way I can describe it. So it's not that you're thinking back, oh, that was a pretty tough time. It is like you are in the movie. Does that make sense to anybody? And it normally is associated with flashbacks. And when you get those flashbacks, what happens is that the tape starts to play. I don't know how best to describe that. Does anybody other than myself have PTSD? Because if so, then that will make a lot more sense. I'm going to give a couple of examples of it, just so that you can hopefully relate to it a bit better. But I just wanted to check if anybody. Chip does. Jody does. Okay. So was the description that I just gave adequate? I tried to make it short, but I know it's a complicated subject. And I'm sure for those of you who are really interested, you will do some research into it. Okay. So it's not that you remember a bad thing. It's that you actually, when you remember, you relive the moment, literally, with all the, I have PTSD apparently that goes back to before I could even talk. And I will talk about that later. But literally, what will happen is I'm shaking my head like this because that's, as you can probably tell, I was abused, physically abused. Um, and I was hit a lot, and not by my mom, funnily enough, but it was something that I still react to, and I will explain why. Okay, so let me try and give a good example of this. For those of you who can remember far enough back to Vietnam, there were a lot of soldiers who came back from Vietnam who suffered from PTSD. Now, and some of them didn't. Some of them had bad memories of what went on, but they didn't actually get psychologically affected by it. They remembered the bad stuff. I'm certain all of you have got grandparents or great grandparents who were in the war and who don't want to talk about it. That's different. They are just choosing not to rethink about the trauma of it all, right? They have control of that. They can say, it was a bad time, but I don't want to talk about it. And they just have put down a wall where they don't. Now, that is something that a lot of us do with very traumatic situations. We actually put down a wall to protect ourselves from the effects of it, which is an interesting thing. However, some Vietnam vets would come back, and for example, they'd be driving a car somewhere, in Houston or wherever they lived, and they'd hear a helicopter coming down low, and it probably was a traffic cam or something like that, one of those traffic helicopters or a news helicopter, and it would come down low, and the moment they could hear those rotors going, the movie started, the tape started in their mind, and they would literally veer the car to the side of the road and maybe jump in a ditch and take cover without even being aware. Does this make sense? Because in their tape, the movie that they're playing, that helicopter was about to try and kill them. And so their instinct and everything else about it, and they would be literally, if you took their heart, blood pressure and everything else, everything would be elevated because they're reliving that trauma. Does that make sense? So this isn't rational, if you like. It is beyond that. It is that the body remembers. The body, I like to think of it that way. The body remembers these things. Now, if you talk to people who have survived abuse, they will tell you that a look, a voice tone, a touch can all create that movie being played. I am amazed how many times that has happened to me, where literally somebody gave me a funny look and I recognized that look. That look to anybody else was just a look. To me, that is the look that comes before da 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 da, and the tape would start to play. And I've had to do a lot of work. We were talking last week about affirmations. I've had to do a lot of work on affirmations to reprogram myself, because you understand the tape will be there. It's not going to go away. I like to talk about Jones, my librarian, in my head. Jones collects information for me, and and sorts it and files it away. Some things he files away just in case I need it, but probably never will. Some things he files very close to the consciousness, because he thinks that's important enough that I might need it again. And unfortunately, some of those things are bad things. Make sense? And I have to tell Jones, no, I don't need that anymore. Really, I don't want to keep reliving that. So do me a favor, go file it away in a vault somewhere where I don't have to revisit it unless I tell you to revisit it. In other words, if I went, let me give you an example. When would I want to open up that vault? Maybe if I went to therapy, and wanted to talk about it some more. Then I would say in my mind to Jones, my librarian, okay, we're going to open up that vault now and let's see what comes out now. And again, that happened to me once, and it was quite scary, but that's called, but you need the affirmations to put it away so that it doesn't become an everyday thing. Now, the reason I'm talking about this today is because something happened to Lauren this week, which I'm not, as I said, I'm not a medical person, so I can't diagnose this, but it reminded me, let's put it that way, it reminded me of PTSD. And what happened was that Lauren got to go home for a quick visit. I'm not quite sure what that was about, but maybe it was to find out how she is coping and whether she has everything she needs. And what happened to her was, when she walked into the house, well, not walked, because she's in a wheelchair, but when she went into the house, she suddenly got a tape, she suddenly started to feel all the feelings that she had when she was so sick just before she got put into hospital. Now, do you understand what I'm trying to describe here? In other words, as she went into her house, into her bedroom, I think, or wherever it was, which room she went into, suddenly those feelings overwhelmed her. And she literally had to say, I need to get out of the house. Now, I'm not saying that it is post-traumatic, but it reminded me of post-traumatic situation, because that wasn't something that she didn't just go, gosh, I remember the last time I was in here, I was feeling pretty sick. No, what she did is she started to have the physical replay of those feelings. And, it's amazing how the body does that. It's a really amazing thing that the body remembers things. And you don't consciously tell it to remember it. The body remembers. And it can get triggered by a smell, a look, a voice tone, anything. So my heart bled for her, because that must be very difficult when she's so looking forward to going home. And what she may have to do is to get some help to work through that, so that she, who wants to have that happen to them when they go home after spending a long time in hospital? Yeah, very scary for her, and very scary for anybody, as you're going to hear. So I don't know if any of you have had experience of that, where you literally, a deja vu moment, and it wasn't very pleasant. Some deja vu moments are actually fine. How many of you have got the upside of that, which is you'll hear a piece of music play, and you automatically start to smile, because your body remembers you were dancing to that when you were 13, and or you were on your first date, or you were in love at that time, and that was your song, whatever. So some of these things you will have experienced on the positive side, but they can be really scary on the negative side. So when I do these lunchtime broadcasts, I like to take. Oh, thank you. I am glad that you're there. I hope you're having fun, Leah. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Yeah, I'm obviously not there this year. Actually, I'm amazed how many people have written to me and asked me where am I because they haven't seen me. Ah, and Laura's with you? That is awesome. And are you having fun? Ah, that's good. And Alice is with you? Oh, hi there, Laura. Good to see you. Yeah, it really is quite something, isn't it? Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I am delighted that she is with you as well. So, hi to all of you. But I am really, really happy that you're having such a good time. I have very fond memories of my time at VidCon. So I am glad that you're having fun. Yeah, I know what you need, those lunch breaks, right? I I I worked it out, Leah, that on average I did about 10,000 steps a day when I was at VidCon. 10 to 12,000 without even realizing it. Just walking there, walking up and down, going, from room to room, all that sort of stuff. It was amazing. Yeah. I know the editing, you sort of do that all day and then you edit all night. I think, Leah, you will appreciate how much time I spent. How is it even bigger? I think it only holds 20,000, doesn't it? How did they make it even bigger? Ah, and what's the new section? Ah, a new building. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm sure that my memories of that are really great. So I'm really, really happy for you, and I know that you will all have a great time together. Aren't those food trucks wonderful? And if you can find the guy on the left-hand side normally, who's doing the lobster open sandwich. Actually, no, it wasn't it was a closed sandwich, grilled lobster sandwich to die for. I mean, I want to tell you that way, there are a lot of grilled sandwiches in your life, but to have a lobster one is quite something. I had to be really careful, as you know, because I'm allergic to garlic. So I couldn't go to a lot of those food trucks, but I found this one guy and that really was pretty high end. And I just said to him, okay, fine, here's my problem. And he said, not a problem. And every day I'd go there and we would just decide what he was going to cook me specially. But he was really good. And I never did have a problem as long as I ate at his truck. So I was very, very happy. All right. So moving right along, but really great that you popped in and thank you. And I am sure that everybody will thoroughly enjoy your footage from there and anything else that you do for that matter. So I'm delighted that you're having fun. It's amazing. All right. So, yes. Okay. So big hugs to you all. And thank you for popping in. Um, I've stayed in a teepee, I can tell you. So so, but I'll wait until I finish doing what the broadcast is about, and then I'll let you know. So, the story about taking one step at a time and the reference to possible post-traumatic stress. Do you understand that what post-traumatic stress is sort of almost out of your control, but from my experience, you can, in some cases, lessen the effect of it. In other words, if you can recognize, wow, the tape just started to play, sometimes you can actually stop the tape if you're lucky. I had one incident in the last 10 years where I couldn't stop the tape. It just overwhelmed me, and I just couldn't stop the tape at all. So it was a rough day for me. But I found that now that I can do an affirmation, and for example, if you can get, I think somebody once said to me when I was dealing with this thing, if the most important thing when you are in any sort of anxiety, all right, for those of you who suffer from anxiety, the most important thing to work on is get outside of it. In other words, stop being in the movie. Take part of you outside and look at it from the outside in. So see yourself, if you like, see yourself doing what is you're doing and go, okay, this isn't real. This is reliving a trauma, and then start talking to your little traumatic child. And I like to think of it that way, that this is a child in trauma. Whether it happened to you as an adult or a child isn't important. And I'll go, it's okay. I am stronger now, and I can help you through this. Because I know part of me is reacting to this, but there is a little part of me that isn't, because I'm able to see it from the outside in. Does that make sense? And so what I will start doing is actually force myself out of the situation if I can get that control. And I want to tell you that I've learned how to do that now. And most of the time, if the tape gets triggered, I can get myself out of it now by using affirmations. Like, it's okay. It happened, but it's over. You don't have to keep reliving this. And I will actually literally say to Jones, that's the guy that runs my library in my head, Jones, go file this away. I don't want to keep reliving it, please. And if I need it, I will let you know. But other than that, lock it in a vault somewhere. I don't want to keep reliving it. And I am amazed how many things from my past I have managed to, quieten down just by doing that. So it requires, if you think you might have PTSD, in other words, that the tape keeps replaying and you can't control it, then I really would encourage you to get some help. And that doesn't mean that you're psycho or stupid or whatever. It actually is that something has happened that has traumatized you. Now, obviously, the part of the reason I'm talking about this is because of what happened to the little children on the American border. Hi there, Pat. Pat, how was your trip? Are you on another one? Because the trauma of those children being taken away from their parents. Some of those children had never been away from their parents in their lifetime. You see, that's what I wondered. You've just checked into another park. Well, I am so glad that you are getting away every weekend. That is amazing. That is so good for your health. So good for your health. And I know it's a lot of stress getting everything ready to camp. Do you have a checklist, Pat? What needs to go with you? Of course, you're loving it. Yes. Anything that, and I have to, for any of you who suffer from anxiety, from any of you who suffer from any sort of stress issue, then one of the most important things you can do is get out of the house. I don't care whether it's just going down to do some shopping. I get out of the house. I don't care whether you get in, just go out to walk for 10 minutes. Get out of the house. The reason for that, the reason for that is because it gives you social interaction, whether you want it or not. You know something, Pat? That's how mine was as well. I had everything I needed in the trailer, and then all I needed to do was to take. Um, I doubled up on a lot of things. You know what I mean? I'd have the one that I kept in the house and the one that's in the trailer. I'm sure that you've done the same thing. But even so, I still, I used to pack a great deal. Now, Pat, what this, I just want to move on from here for a second, because part of my downsizing research is that I'm now moving on to looking at apartments. And now, you know what else I have also included now is possible houseboats. In other words, floating homes rather than a houseboat. You even doubled up on computers and a sewing machine into the trailer that stays there. Ah, that is so clever. So there's part of me, Pat, that thinks that I could actually probably be quite happy in a float home. And the reason I'm thinking about that, because when I do my list of what's important to me, the number one thing on my list is light. I am very fortunate. The house that I live in, that I really am sad to leave, has an incredible amount of light in it. Every room, I've got skylights in it. I've got, big windows and things like that. Pat, that's interesting about the CPAC machine. I actually did some research this week because it suddenly struck me, what happens if there's a power failure? One of the things I found out, by the way, when I was doing my research on fifth wheels, Pat, is they recommend that you have a battery that is dedicated to the CPAC machines. In other words, if that everything else you're using isn't draining your CPAC machine battery, if you're off grid. Are you hooked up or are you off grid? Okay. As in generator? Oh, you need to write to me about that. Please. Not while you're vacationing, but maybe during the week. I'd love to hear more about that. One of the things I did some research in is, if I had a power failure, would I die? So what I discovered, and I sort of worked this out for myself, that I would probably wake up because I'd start to choke. And you're all probably going, "Wow, that's pretty bad." Well, you understand that's what was happening to me before I got the CPAC machine. I kept waking up choking 16 times an hour. How do you do that? Does it automatically kick in? For those of you who aren't CPAC users, this is one of those machines that go over your nose to push air into your system during the night. I found out that I have a problem. I found out about February. Well, February I got the machine, and boy, has it made a difference. And by the way, I had one night last week where I had no incidents, none of choking. I went from 16 times an hour to going a whole night without a single one. I got a gold star on the system for that. So it is amazing. And I want to tell you, if you guys are snoring, if you are feeling incredibly tired when you wake up instead of revitalized, that is probably, you want to get that checked. All right. You are going to send me information. So you actually wear it when you're sleeping in the car on a trip? Wow. That is really incredible. You really have this sorted out. I'm trying to work out how you do that battery thing at home. That's what I'm trying to work out. But I don't need to, take your valuable time when you're on vacation. But I do want to say that I am delighted that you're doing it. Yeah. How severe was it? I don't know about you, Pat, but I cannot say enough about getting checked out. It's not something that I even thought was an issue. But if you have not checked out whether you have a sleep apnea problem, really look into it if you're snoring a lot, or if you're waking up coughing, or literally, I was waking up feeling like I was choking to death. Well, guess what? I was. But luckily, my body was waking me up before I died. I'm very grateful to my body for doing that for me. 65 times an hour. That is amazing. All right. Yeah. And that was the peculiar thing, Pat, because I know what the respirologist said to me was, although 16 times an hour wasn't a lot, he said he probably even wouldn't have suggested putting me on a CPAC machine, except two things. Number one, I was being woken up another 16 times an hour just from the restless leg syndrome. But what worried him was all the symptoms I was having was that I was being severely affected. Right? And that was to him, that was the important thing. That the actual symptoms, my presenting symptoms, if you like, were such that they needed to put me on a CPAC machine, and I have thanked him for that ever since. Because to me, that isn't. I mean, you start off thinking you look like Darth Vader, and I personally, I don't know about anybody else, but I actually now have a little thing where it's time for me to start thinking about going to sleep, so I will put my mask on. And I probably will just watch a program or something wearing the mask so that I'm no longer aware of the mask, because I've already been breathing through it for an hour, and then I will turn over and go to sleep. And it's amazing. I'm the other thing I found, Jody, I know that you have a CPAC as well. The other thing I found, hang on a second. I'm sitting on a small cushion here, and I want to show you something. I found that actually clutching a small pillow helps, because it stops your chin from opening up. I don't have a full mask. I just have a nose one, and I found that it's helped when I sleep like this. I must look really pretty with my mask on and sleeping like this. But what I found is I actually get much better scores when I do that. The nights that I do that, sometimes I fall asleep before I remember. But it's good. All right. So, good input. Thank you, Pat. I am so happy for you. Pat, I was just saying, I'm now considering it works, Jody. You know me, I'm always Miss MacGyver here, always looking for a way around that. So I am now considering the possibility of getting a houseboat. That's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. Because when I look at my list of things, I don't really want to be working lawns and things anymore. Thank you very much. I've had enough of that. I've been there, done that. I don't want, I looked at what I didn't want to be doing for the next 10, 15 years. And then I looked at what I do want to be doing. And, what I've noticed is 90% of the time, the view from a houseboat is awesome. You've either got a view of the river or you've got a view of, you know, some body of water, and then other houseboats, which is pretty as long as they're far away. But, it's really quite interesting. It has community. I'm looking for community. Not that I want people in my face all the time. It is about I am on my own. So if anything happens to me, I want somebody to care that, that they didn't see me that day. Because that's important. And the only downside for me, I think, about a houseboat or a floating home. There's a difference between a houseboat and a floating home. A floating home is literally a home built on a platform that's floating. And that's really what I'm looking for. The only downside I can see, my only concern is groceries. Because, you go down a metal gangplank 9 times out of 10 that's fairly steep, and that could be an issue for, as I get older. But I'm thinking, I don't think too big a issue because, as Jody will tell you, 9 times out of 10, my flashing smile will probably get me some help if I need it. Or, the other thing is, Jody, tell Lionel I am now busy thinking about why can't I have a little baby motorized half golf cart thing that I can put, the stuff in the back and then go down on with that. My mind's already thinking of plan B on that one. And why haven't they built little escalators that you can just put your groceries on and they can go down? Now, I know they have little like giant wheelbarrows, but I don't know about the rest of you. I'm a bit scared that the weight of that might be pulling me down when it's icy, for example. I have got to go and talk to some people who live in that environment. But I've seen some really pretty ones. Now, the thing is this, as you know, one of my concerns is, that this will probably be the last home that I have before they put me into a home. So this will be probably the last home of my choosing if I do it right. And what I'm thinking about is, my concern was if I get a mobile home, although I get lots of space, I don't own the ground beneath me. And, land in Vancouver area is so expensive now that they're literally selling land everywhere because they're so needed and it's so valuable. And so I thought, the funny thing is that they really are developing communities of float homes because of that. And I'm thinking, gosh, that would really suit me. That's sort of like a giant-sized tiny house with great views. So I am definitely going to have a look at a few of those. Now, the interesting thing is they're more expensive in some ways, but they're no more expensive than an apartment. The difference is the lifestyle and the community is very different from an apartment. So as somebody who likes to throw paint around, can you understand to be in a small house with windows all around me is a very exciting thing for me. It's it's a whole different thing. And remember that I live in a part of the world where we have rain a lot. And from my experience, you can be sitting in a boat with rain and you don't really mind so much because, you can still see things. And the rain, when you watch it like that, can be quite pretty. So I don't know. I'm having a serious think about going to go and have a look at a couple of them. The only thing is that it would be probably pretty well downsizing, but that's okay. I can do that. I'm trying to work out what I'm going to do with all my tools and things. I think I'm going to have to discuss this with people at the marina. Have we got a workshop? If not, how do we organize one? And of course, being who I am, I'd probably be organizing that we get a special houseboat that's turned into an art room and yeah, workshop. Yeah, I have in the past actually, Chip. Have you ever done it? I've been a couple of times and had a look at them and just drooled, quite honestly, because you go, um, not only that, you see the thing, Chip, that I am going for. Very high on my list of needs is two things. Light is very high, number one on my list of needs, and then community is very important as well. It's not a want, it is a need. And one of the things you'll find about people who, and which is why I was considering a fifth wheel, a dirty, great fifth wheel. One of the things I've noticed is that, you know, people who live on float homes have that sort of mentality of community. In other words, somebody has a problem, everybody comes to help because they've all going to have a problem. They know that, and so it's a very community sort of environment. It's a lifestyle choice, and you don't end up with what can I say, land because don't have any. But what you've got is lifestyle. And so everybody is pretty laid back in a float home. Some of them are $1 million float homes. I mean, some people just have gone whole hog on these things. But I definitely have been and seen some. I've seen some and really thought I could do this. The only thing is, I probably wouldn't be able to fit my furniture in a lot of them. So I would have to consider, do I still want to take this? Do I still want to take that? So, but that's something I'm probably going to have to do anyway. But I think I could get quite excited about that. How on earth? I mean, some of them, I've got to be quite, I've got to be quite truthful about this. Some of them seem to have very little space between the front door and falling off into the dock. How many of you can imagine me going, "Oh yeah, I forgot I don't have a garden here. That's water." And what I'll do actually is I'll try and get into some and then so that I can show you or yeah. How many of you are going, yeah, you can just see me going, "Oh, I wasn't expecting to go swimming today, but yeah, that woke me up." But a lot of them actually have what I call a cement dock between you and the next one, and they use that cement dock as a patio. That's clever. So, and some of them have got great roof decks on them. So, to me, it's about. And by the way, you sit up on the roof deck, you've got a 360 view, unless the person next to you has a dirty great houseboat, in which case you don't. So the only downside that I can see for me is how would I deal with, because I seem to spend an awful lot of time at the coming back from shopping. So part of me goes, I probably need to go shopping more often and not buy as much. Does that make sense? In other words, go shopping for a couple of bags worth, not for 6. And that's not altogether a bad thing because we're talking about it's very important that you get out and about out of the house because that is healthy. One of the things that really I have found. You saw my blog on It's Judy's Life? Hi, Nicole, by the way. Welcome. And Jamie, I did see you there. Welcome. Well, welcome. We're delighted to see you there. Are you a street teamer? Ah, there you go. Okay. You saw me in one of Judy's vlogs. Oh, well, that's great. Well, big hugs to you, and thank you for popping in, Nicole. It's always you'll be amazed actually how many of my viewers, originally saw me on one of the videos from either Benji or Judy. So it's wonderful to see you there. And it was quite funny because I know when they were in the Philippines for last year's December, I know that so many people were so frustrated because I wasn't with them. And I just said, no, it's okay. But it was, I really want to tell you that I love the Philippines. I've been there. I've spent some very magical time there many years ago. And if you I know I have very fond memories. It was the first time though that it was just after Korea Kino, actually just after the Marcos revolution against Marcos happened. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever been to a country where they literally had people with machine guns outside the stores. Do they still have that? That not only was the security at the airports, it was like every store you went into, they were checking your bags. They were checking that you were not carrying something you shouldn't. And I'd never experienced that before. It was quite something for me. I just like, wow. Wish I'd been a vlogger then. And but I got to meet some incredible people. I got to meet Mrs. Aquino. I got to meet Judy Keith, I think her name, Cardinal Sin. I met some incredible people during my time there, and I, I actually value it when I think about places that I visited in my lifetime. My trip to the Philippines was one that I have very high on my list. There are a couple of places in the world that I say are, were great memories. And I would love to go back to, but I am smart enough to know that all these years later, it won't look the same as when I originally went there before it became famous or before it became popular. You know what I mean? Things have changed so much in the world that I actually remember visiting one island. Um, Hi there, Amy. I remember visiting one island off Malta in the Mediterranean Sea, and it was the most idyllic spot that you can imagine, with the most beautiful, pristine beach with nothing on it, and it was just. I remember spending. I think it's called Camino, and I spent 10 days there, and there's something about almost having a beautiful bay to yourself, a sandy bay to yourself that is just amazing. And just out of interest, not so long ago, I actually Googled this island and this beach that I was on. And guess what? Today it is wall to wall hotels around it. And I'm going, no, I wouldn't want to one. And that's not quite the same as I remember it. And I've done that for a couple of places that I've been where I'm going, I was so fortunate. I saw it before it got built up. I saw it when it was just pristine and so beautiful. So the whole reason I picked this subject for today, just so that you know, is because some of you will have watched the news and seen the trauma that the young children have gone through being separated from their parents. Now, I'm pretty sure that some of you were pretty upset about that. And I am certain that there are different schools of thought as to, whether that's good or bad. Should we, I don't think that anybody thinks that we should be letting everybody come through the borders willy-nilly. That's not it. But I think there is a case for genuine people, who are fleeing persecution. And that is why we have refugee status in any country. And so to me, it's really was amazing that we could do this to children. And not we, because I'm in Canada, but I want to tell you something that I got. I don't know about any of you, but I got physically angry and upset, and I can feel I'm getting upset just talking about it. And why would you use the children as a chip, a playing, a pawn in your chess game? Why would you do this? It's so wrong at every level. It is so wrong. But the point that I really wanted to make was some of these children that were separated from their parents by police may never recover in their lifetime. That level of trauma will be imprinted on their brains forever. And unless they get a lot of help deprogramming that tape in their head, and and locking it away so that they can see that this isn't does not need to define their life. It can affect them for a long, long time. So, does anybody have any views on that? What do you think should happen? So that we do not create this level of trauma? I must admit that I got to the stage today when I got up today and I was listening to a certain person yet again dominating the news. And I just went, I said a couple of really nasty words to that person and I turned my television off. I don't do that very often. I'm a news freak. I love to listen to the news from around the world. And it's just like, really today, I just went, I have had so much. I really can't take it anymore. Yeah, it's too much. So, and I have to be pretty angry to feel like that. There is a limit to what in my life. All right, so people, can any of you relate to that tape being played? Can any of you see that taking a step to protect yourself from that is something that you need to take a step towards, right? It's like the shredding. It's not going to go away unless A, you get some help, or B, you start deprogramming yourself in a way and locking away that particular problem. And however we distract ourselves from it doesn't mean the tape won't be there. It'll still be there. But the thing is, we need to learn how to control it a little bit. And there are a lot of people who may never be able to control it. And, it can affect them for the rest of their life. And the whole thing is any trauma will affect you for the rest of your life. How many of you have been through any sort of trauma? And for some of you, it was traumatic, yes, but you managed to carry on with your life. And for some of you, I am sure that it was a huge thing. Oh, Nicole, it's a pleasure. Boy, it's a pleasure to talk about my trip to the Philippines. I for some reason, that's only just come through on my feed. I think there's a block on the feed for some reason. Yeah, Amy, you've been through a trauma, so you understand. Well, Nicole, I thank you for offering to be my tour guide when I come back. There is a bit of a lineup on that issue. I've had quite a few people say, when you come back, I'm going to. Now, you know what I learned, Nicole? The biggest memory, it's funny how I remember certain things from different countries. It was the first time I came across Filipino time. I'd never come across that before. And you need to understand that I am a bit of a time freak. So you tell me that I need to be ready by this time. I presume that is exactly what you mean. So you tell me I'm going to pick you up at 12 o'clock for lunch. I will be ready at 1:45. And I will be waiting from 1:45 onwards to make sure I'm not late. So you can imagine, Nicole, my absolute confusion when the people that invited me to lunch picked me up at 5 o'clock. Is this normal? And I talked about it later, and people just rolled their eyes and said, "Oh, Filipino time." And I'm going, "What's with that?" How do you know when to be ready? When it can have a 5-hour window to it. Now, I guess that it doesn't affect how many people in the room are time freaks. When people say, come to dinner at 6, you're there at 6, or you, yeah. Wow, Amy, that is an amazing thing. Amy, I want to tell you something that I gave up cigarettes nearly 6 years ago, 6 or maybe going on 7. Not quite sure. I have to link it to Juliana. How old's Juliana going to be on the next birthday? 6, I think. Yeah. Anyways, because that was the year I went down to see her just a few months after she was born, and that's the day I gave up smoking. January the 12th, 2012, at 9:30 in the morning, I gave up smoking. So yeah, that's right. I actually started broadcasting. No, 2013 was when I went, I think. Yeah, and you want to tell you something, Amy? I really relate to anybody that's given up any addiction of any sort. And funny enough, people don't realize it, but people who were heavy smokers, that addiction is worse than heroin, they tell me. If you've got a history of being a heavy smoker, that the withdrawal from that is as bad, if not worse, than heroin. Yeah, I think it is 5 years, coming up 6. I think Juliana's about to be 6. So she was born in the October, and I visited her, in the January. So that's how I link it. So as long as I can know how old Juliana is, I know how many years I've given up smoking for. Well, you're having trouble getting over trauma. Wow, Amy. Well, are you getting help with any professional at all? Yes, they are, Becca. But for those of you watching on the replay, Becca's just saying that the twins are starting to look less alike as they get older. Yeah, they're getting their own look. They've always had their own personality. It's amazing how different their personality is, but they definitely are changing. But they're still cute as a button. What a handful. I give Benji and Judy prizes for patience with those two. Yes, Amy, and that's the interesting thing, isn't it? That sometimes the help that you need doesn't come in the way that you think. And so one of the things that I've always tried to talk about, Amy, is, not everybody wants all the gobbledygook. Do you know what I mean? Excuse me. One of the things that I found was, why don't they just talk about this in English so that I can understand it? I really found it very difficult when I was learning to recover from trauma, and that it somehow or other didn't quite get talked about in regular everyday terms that I could understand. And so I've really worked very hard over the years to talk about these issues because I don't think people talk about them enough. I think if people realize that there are more people out there with things like PTSD than you know, I it's not something that only the Vietnam vets came back with. It's something that an awful lot of women suffer from because of abuse, and it is an awful lot of. And I've met a lot of men that suffered from abuse and that suffer from PTSD. I've met a lot of people who had a traumatic event happen. Um, and it shifted their psyche for the rest of their life. And so I think it's really important that we talk about it and don't sort of pretend that it's something that only these people have. It's like it's out there all the time. And you can literally be walking down a street and a car will backfire and some people will run for shelter. Amy, let me give you an example. If I hear a car backfire, I will put my foot on the gas and get out of Dodge. Do you know what I mean? I will literally get away from it. Do you know why? Well, I don't mean dangerously, but literally my instinct will be to get out of there. The reason is I was driving a car in Africa once, story time. I was driving a car in Africa once and somebody shot a gun at my car. And the bullet went behind my neck, came through my back window, and literally went out of the other window. And I had with me at the time a very good-looking Rhodesian who had just come away from, being in that sort of a situation himself. And he immediately, as soon as it happened, he said, put your, get out of here fast. And because what he told me afterward, and I did what he told me, what he explained to me was you never know if there's a second bullet coming. So therefore, if you experience the first, there's that split second where you go, what the was that? And then you realize that was a bullet, that noise, and that was a bullet. And so what I learned from that was if ever you hear that, get out of the way because there may be a second bullet. And you need to be far enough away so by the time they reload or whatever, that, that it isn't, if they're for some reason. Now, it took me a little while to find out what had happened, but if you want to hear insanity, yes, it is now Zimbabwe, yes. I apologize for having called it Rhodesia. It was Rhodesia at the time that this happened, so it was technically correct. But I realize now that Zimbabwe is the name that you guys all know it by. Thank you for that, Becca. I appreciate it. And so here was the thing. Can you understand that memory has stayed with me all my life? So if I hear a car backfire and it sounds like a gunshot to me, I will actually get to a safe place. Now, that is a memory that is imprinted on my brain. Now, you guys probably hear a car backfire and don't react to it. It's car backfiring. That's the only time. That's the only time you've heard a noise like that. So, do you understand why I say that the body remembers? Yes, exactly, Becca. I was triggered and I have it imprinted in my brain now. Not all noises like that are backfires. Some of them are more dangerous. But the opposite is also true. Not all noises like that are guns. Some of them are just cars backfiring. But I must admit that to this day, I still will get out of the way before I process that. Now, I want to give a heads up and a round of applause to Jody, because Jody did something this week that I think that you might all be aware of and working on. Jody had this situation happen to her this week that was very frustrating. There's this whole incident with her going to the dentist, and after she'd gone all the way there, they then told her, "Oh well, unless you pay this much money, we're not going to do anything." And they hadn't told her that when she made the appointment. She thought it was covered. But the interesting thing was that when I was speaking to her about it afterwards, she said something and I smiled and went, "Oh, that's so good." What Jody said was, "I need to vent because I haven't really processed it yet." And that is what, I knew that Jody really was doing great work with herself, because she realized that the emotion you have in the moment is very different from the emotion when you've had a chance to balance it out from both sides. And when you balance it out from both sides, and that's how many of you are getting into the habit of doing that now? Just because it sounded like this doesn't mean that it actually was like this. It just in the way that I was disappointed or frustrated or everything else, it felt like a heck of a hit, but really, maybe it wasn't. Yes, you knew that you had the ability to calm yourself down and get yourself back together. And by the way, Jody, when you do that processing, right, when you see both sides of the story, when you can actually see it from their side, where you know and go, okay, I can see it from their side, but I also know that this was wrong from my side. I think that's when you realize, wow, I'm getting better. I'm emotionally getting better. And what I have found is that I know if I say something and it upsets somebody, I didn't upset them. It is the way that they received it that upset them. Does that make sense? No, Jody, I'm not joking. When you said to me, but I'll feel better once I've had a chance to process this, I went, yay, she knows that now. All right, so, you know, I don't go out of my way to hurt people, and I'm sure you don't either. But sometimes, have you found that out? That sometimes you will say the most simple thing, Becca, innocuous comes to mind. You will say the most simple thing, and you go, why did they react like that? It wasn't what you said, it was their perception of what you said. You like innocuous. Becca, I keep thinking of you when I keep hearing on the news them saying about gaslighting, and I'm going, there are not many people I know that actually would know what gaslighting means. And yet they use it a lot. And it's just like, Becca would probably be one of them. So I just want you to know that you are constantly in my thoughts. Becca, by the way, has an incredible vocabulary when you get her going. She really loves words. And so I can use the word simple, but for Becca, I will use innocuous, meaning it will do no harm. Um, so, I've now really come to understand that I can say something and somebody will react, but I then need to explain to them that it was never my intent to hurt them. My intent was just to say 1 and 1 makes 2. The fact you turned it into 1 and 1 makes 11, because in their world, 1 plus 1 makes 11. Then you can see that this isn't actually what I said. This is how they received what I said. So somewhere between you sending a message and somebody receiving it, there is a filter that goes on. Does that make sense to people? And You can say 1, 2, 3 here, and how many of you played that game where you whisper in somebody's ear and it completely changes the meaning? And I think that's something you have to remember, that in life, it happens to us all the time. And, Jody, I keep thinking back to your experience, not so long ago, and we did discuss that, "Hi, Lolo, good to see you. How is our Marley?" I saw some really cute pictures of him. Um, but what I was what was I gonna say about Jody again? Hang on a second. I got distracted. But the problem that we have is we say the one thing, somebody else received it a different way. Oh, I know what I was gonna talk about, Jody, which is your experience with your, uh, family members, right? Where they were suddenly wanted to give you a fun surprise. Thank you, Chip. Yeah, the filter. They wanted to give you a fun surprise by showing up with only a day's notice. Duh. Um, you know, their idea of fun and yours were very different because of your reality. To them, they really believe that you would be so excited to see them. For you, yeah, right, not so much. I need at least a couple of weeks warning of that because of the way that my house has turned into an emergency ward. So, I think that that is probably one of the greatest examples of where two people, this person had a great intent. If you can see it from their side, to give you this wonderful surprise. The other side is this is my reality, and I don't need surprises. I've got enough going on in my life. I really can't handle surprises. I think some of you will remember that for my 40th birthday party, I was fairly new in Canada. I was newly married, and my husband decided to bring in a male stripper as a birthday present for me. How many of you, well, I say a stripper, but a male exotic dancer, let's put it that way. Um, how many of you know that was not my idea of fun, especially when I had cabinet ministers and all sorts of celebrities in my house at the time? And I say that because that was true. And suddenly this happens. And I want to tell you something. The most difficult thing is how do you deal with it? How do you pretend that that's okay when it isn't okay with you? And I do know that round about that time I realized I had married the wrong man because obviously this man knew nothing about me at all. It's like if you really thought that would be my idea of fun, no, this might be your idea of fun, not mine. No, you know something? I played the part. There's that part of me that's capable of being a performer. I played the part, but I was amazed how many people came to me and said that wasn't your idea of fun, was it? I said no. And there are times when you just have to suck it up and do s- whatever. There's part of me that goes, uh, I guess I could have asked him to leave. And I wonder in retrospect whether I would today. That's a very good question, Chip. How many of you I was not quite as aware then as I am now, Chip, you know? Let's put it that way. It was nearly half a lifetime ago. I've learned a lot since then. I think I probably would today. Say, listen, uh, if anybody here is enjoying this, carry on. I just need to leave the room. This is not my idea of fun. Um, but it is difficult to stand up and tell your truth. And so I would encourage you all to think about how many times do we accept things in the name of, trying to be polite, as opposed to just going, "Excuse me, that this is not my idea of fun." It is a very difficult thing. I'm learning that as I get older, that, people do not like my truth necessarily, and suddenly that's okay with me. I keep thinking, I maybe have 15, 20 years left if I'm lucky. I think I wanna live it slightly differently. Yeah, I don't do surprises well, those sort of surprises. You're right, Chip. Yes, you see, Nicole, that's what I'm saying. That in my learning today, and we have learned a lot. You must remember, that 20, 30, we're talking, over 30 years ago. I didn't know as much then as I know now. Yeah, you'd be mad, yes. Um, and so I'm pretty sure that today I would react very differently, but that's called experience, Nicole. And you see, the other thing is, you must, I know, not that you must, but I would like you to know, if you don't already, that in my generation, um, I was told as a child, my job in life was to get an education and find a good man and get married and settle down and have children. That that was it. That was my um, job. It wasn't to have a career. It wasn't to, make a difference in the world. It wasn't to do any of those things. My role in life, and I was told it repeatedly, was to get a good education, marry well, and live happily ever after. Yeah, right. Um, and so, we when we went through the '60s, and I want to just make sure that you understand that the '60s was a very magical time for those of us who lived through it. It wasn't just about the Beatles and the Stones and and the other wonderful music that came about, but it was about realizing that the norms that women had grown up with had changed dramatically. And we actually got to tell a lot more of the truth than we used to. And so, as each decade goes by, I think women are getting stronger and stronger about actually standing up for who they are and what they need and what they want. And so I am so fortunate to have lived through those decades. You know what I mean? I look at it now and I look at, for example, I look at Juliana and the twins. The life they will live is very different from the life I will live. Why? They are programmed differently, right? Can any of you remember how you were programmed as a child? What is your memory of what your job was in life? What your goal was in life? What were you told? Because that can affect the way you live your whole life. Don't be a man hater. I actually, something? I find that interesting. I actually feel great sympathy for men these days. I really do. I think it must be very difficult, especially for the older ones, the ones that are my age and maybe a little bit younger. Uh, everything that they were taught has changed. Yeah. So, Amy, can you talk about how you were programmed? You don't have to, of course, but it's like it's important to know that the things we tell each other is very important. I have said a number of times that I am amazed at the way my realtor talks about me when we are out looking at properties. The way she describes me is not a way I would describe myself. And it's like Jody, when she describes me, always calls me Miss MacGyver because she knows that I'm always working on a plan B on something. Well, this doesn't work. Let me try it this way. There has to be a way around this. It's just, it just doesn't work like this. So you have to know me pretty well to know those sort of things. But I listened to my realtor describe me. And she just, it really is amazing because, the realtor that's trying to sell me the property is busy going chit chat, trying to tell me, this is a drawer or whatever. And I'm going, yeah, really, you don't do that to me. I know what a drawer is. I know what it looks like. And my realtor will just let me feel the house. Do any of you know what I'm saying? Just to feel it, because she knows I'm a creative person. So if the house doesn't feel right to me, um, that that is very difficult. She knows that I'm looking for how much light is there, how much energy is there almost. She knows that my senses are very important to me. Okay, and when I go to look for a house, I will go for light and energy before I will go for fancy whatever. And so she knows that. Why? She sold me this house. And by the way, I've been here nearly 20 years. Yeah, okay, so now here we've got, so one person is saying here that I was told just to be a secretary when I finished high school. Just to be a secretary. Yeah, little girls should be seen and not heard. And, that's quite funny because, um, yeah, I got trained into that as well. How many of you know that was not a good role for me? Well, actually, it was a very good role for me in some ways because I got to control an awful lot of people, but they didn't know that at the time when they employed me. But yeah. I found out that actually, if you do it right, I'm not sure about you, Chip, but if you do it right, you actually can get quite a bit of power and and get quite a few things done. My boss used to go off and play golf all the time. Why? Because he knew whatever was going on, Sal would fix it. And he was right. And I can't believe how many times people would say to me, but you're just a secretary. And I going, no, just a secretary with a brain. So do me a favor, just do what you're told, please. Yeah, and some people here saying that, my parents weren't parents to me, so I got a lot of negative talk from them. My self-esteem suffered greatly. Yeah. Yeah, how many of you can relate to that? That the affirmations, if you like, you were given, and we were talking about that last week, Amy. If you check back on the replay of the affirmation discussion we had, that, part of our job is to realize that I think I said something like over 80%, I can't remember the figure right now, but over 80% of what we hear every hour is negative thoughts. And so it's really important to give ourselves positive feedback. Yeah, Chip, you know what? It was interesting. As a secretary, I had to look on the plus side. Yeah, it didn't suit my personality. I'm not somebody who could sit down and just do what I was told, right? All right. So to me, it was just like, okay, fine. Wow. I want to thank you for that comment. One of the viewers here is saying that they watched that one on affirmations with me, and they said that everything I said they could relate to. And that is really, Amy, why I do these broadcasts. I want to take these issues that maybe maybe you need to hear this. I don't know. I know that when I heard some things in my life, I thought, why didn't somebody else tell me that earlier? Why did I think I was the only bozo in the room when actually I wasn't a bozo at all? Nobody had ever told me that this was okay. Nobody had ever told me, that having this level of trauma in my early life could have caused that. Now, I did say that I would talk about that. I don't want, I've left it sort of towards the end here because I didn't want it to dominate. But I literally, oh, Amy, I can be your mom anytime you want, honey. You can write to me. You can. You know, I assure you, I can give you a hug almost any time you want. And there are people around the world who will tell you that I actually do answer at some unearthly hour of the night in my time. There are some times when I'm literally trying to help somebody and I go, by the way, it is 4:30 in the morning here right now, so I do need to get some sleep now. But just because they happen to be in the Philippines or Hong Kong or wherever. Yes, Nicole, and that is exactly why we started Dear Mama Sal, right? So that you could be in a group of people that understood. All right, a group of people that saw that we're all trying to do things a little better in our lives. Jody, are you okay? So I look at it and go, I think it's really important. One of the things I have always said about running Dear Mama Sal is good. I'm pleased to hear it, Jody. Is because I never know who's listening. I never know who's out there. Eh, Nicole and Amy and Chip and everybody that's here today. One of the things I've always found out is that quite often I wonder whether I'm just talking to myself. Yeah, Jody's going to put it up for you, honey. Um, so one of the things that I find is e- every now and then I think, I wonder whether it's worth doing what I'm doing. Maybe I'll just stop doing it. And then, it's amazing when I start thinking like that. Is it really worth spending all the time preparing these little plans for a broadcast or whatever? And it amazes me how many times I'll be thinking that, and suddenly I'll get an email from somebody that goes, I cannot thank you enough for that broadcast you did last week because blah, 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 blah. And I laugh and I go, okay, fine, I guess I'll continue. You see, to me, it's like if it helps one person, if it helps just one person, is it worth the time? I think so, don't you? And so I've made some incredibly good friends and I've met some fascinating people. I do believe that as well. Nicole, I'm going to quote you if that's okay. Let me know if it's okay to quote you. And I'm saying that because of the replay. So to me, this is okay. I got the yes. So what Nicole said, I believe letting them, the other viewers, know that we understand them and that we know where they're coming from are of some help. It may be just a little, but if we can do it constantly, right, it will create something positive. Now, Nicole, we can give you so many examples of this. We can tell you about how many people have listened to the broadcast unknowns to me for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, never ever participated, but eventually did. And because that's how I find out that they'd actually been. I had one viewer tell me that they watched my stuff for months in tears. They were in such emotional pain. But they said, by listening enough, they started to understand things. And they actually were quite surprised. How come nobody else had explained this to them? So I think it's really important. And I also believe is the reason we do the Friday lunchtime one step at a time is the way that we all improve, and that includes me, the way that we all improve is by taking one step towards whatever that goal is. Now, as you know, you may know, I am busy downsizing and I'm still trying to make a decision as to where to go after I've downsized, but I will be leaving my beautiful home and changing my lifestyle for the next decade. And it's like, what do you want to take with you? And, how much have I collected in 20 years? You can imagine, and how much I probably have thrown away half of my life already. My memories, right? I've actually managed to throw them away. Very difficult to do. Can you imagine how emotionally draining it is? Chip can, because Chip's doing the same thing. So, Chip, I'm a great believer, and I've said it to many, many people when I've spoken to them. I actually don't need to go looking for viewers. What I have discovered, to my amazement, is the people who need what I have to say find me. It's weird. And they find me at a time that is important to them when they are ready. And that to me is amazing. And so I never worry about, do I have one person in the room, 10? Doesn't matter to me. What is important to me is that the people that are here want to take a step. And so, Chip, right? If you were accused of wanting to get the shredding done, and I took you to court next week, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I can assure you, I didn't want to do it either. But I gave you my commitment, so I did it. And I was amazed how much I got through. Okay. So think about that, right? That is your affirmation to yourself. If Sal asks me on Sunday whether I kept my commitment, is there enough evidence to convict me? And 10 minutes would be enough. So for anybody else who's procrastinating about doing something, right? Just do 10 minutes. By the way, there's probably a good reason. I've been procrastinating about getting some people in to give me quotes about some things that need to happen um, before I sell my house. The reason is because I wasn't ready. I find it really interesting, Chip. If you start giggling, that's good, all right? Because you're going to hear me saying that. Because I'm going to ask you on Sunday, right? And I don't want to put people off about being accountable, but Chip, you asked for help. And so you will get it. And you will feel so much better when you can go, up yours, Sal. I did it. Yeah. Do they know why, Beth? Well, Lolo, that's a very good question. For those of you who don't know, Lolo in Louisiana here is asking me, uh, is Yvonne and her family, are they going to be leaving too? I can't tell you that because I get to sell her with the house. If you get my drift, I bought her with the house. She's lived here 2 years longer than I have. And so there are some people who would really love to have a tenant that's been there nearly 20 years. In fact, I think Yvonne has. But there are other people that may want the space downstairs. Maybe they've got children or grandchildren that they want to house. So I can't tell you that, but that's been part of my terror about selling is I don't just change my life. I could potentially, and I will, one way or another, I will potentially change Yvonne's as well, because even if she stays, you understand it might not be a pleasant experience for her. They can, do all sorts of things that make her life very uncomfortable. Whereas, I've given her more space than she originally had. I've built a special driveway for her. I did all sorts of things to make her life more enjoyable. And maybe not, maybe they tell her she can only stay within the walls of her suite. Whereas I've let her spread quite a bit into the bottom of my house. So I can't tell you because I don't know, but it has been extremely troubling for me. The other thing is, I Lolo, and you will understand this, that I actually had lunch with Yvonne this week and had a very serious talk to her about what I plan to do if she gets moved, right? If she gets told she has to move. Um, because she and I, she has been a very dear friend to me for many years. And I'm not going to go out of my way to see her struggle. And I assure you that the problem that we have where I live is that the rental market is very difficult and very expensive. And so it is possible that what could happen to her is that she could end up in a lot of stress that is of my making. But I do realize that is also reality. And so to me, I literally, every now and then I sit down and have what I call a really realistic chat to her. Do I have to help Yvonne? No, absolutely not. You know, if I look at her as just a tenant, but she has been a lot more than a tenant to me. And I hope that she will continue to be a lot more in the rest of my life. And so to me, it's very important that she and I talk very openly, and we know it's going to be traumatic for us both. Yeah. So that is a reality that I have to face, and it's difficult, I must say. Have I watched the Golden Girls? Yes, in my day, I watched them a lot. Why do you ask, Nicole? A great show in its time. It was way ahead of its time. And I know that there were a lot of actually, it was a very educational show in a lot of ways. Welcome back, Becca. There were a lot of very good topics that they uh, addressed. When you think about it, oh yeah, it's very funny, and I want to tell you that so much of what they talk about is so real in so many ways. You know, I found it interesting though. If you do a bit of research, Nicole, B. Arthur, who plays Maud, and huh, who was the ditzy one on that one? Anyway, apparently they didn't get on very well. I think I got that right. And Rose, right? Okay, thank you, Jody. I think that's the combination. Those two didn't get on very well, and how difficult must it be to do a comedy show like that? Yeah, they've all passed on except for Betty White. And Betty White, I want to. How many of you admire Betty White? I mean, really, she reminds me of Burns. What was his name? The comedian. Ah, George Burns. Who basically, oh, Maud. But she had a program called Maud. Yeah, Dorothy. You're right. Yeah. Um, yeah, George Burns. Who carried on being a comic, till he was nearly 100. And so you look at it and you go, I believe Betty White just likes being a comedian. Yes, Rue was she was fun, wasn't she? Yeah, and she really. But I liked the mother. she some of the realities she came up with, I'm really relating to now. Sophia, yeah. I mean, some of those realities. I don't know about any of you who are older, but there are some things that she's had in that. And in fact, I probably should watch it again. She was sassy. I related to her. Yeah. But how many of you have members of your family that you can, or your extended family that you can go, oh yeah, I relate to that. It was well written because we've all got a controller, we've all got the little old lady who's feisty, as sassy, as Lolo says. We've all got these different personalities in our lives, and you know, I think that's what makes comedy. Did you hear that they actually are continuing with Roseanne's program without Roseanne? They're going to just call it the Connors, I think, and they're going to continue without. They're not putting another female in her place. They're just going to have the family move on. Now the question is, will it succeed? And I would think it'd be very interesting to see whether it can succeed without her. And you got to think about it. What creates that program is the writing. The guys who are writing this are what made the program so interesting. Yeah, Roseanne was a heck of a character within it, but can they continue the writing but just not write for that personality? And the chances are they probably can. Now, I've started watching a new show, funny enough, yes, Lola, that's what I think. I think John Goodman is good enough to hold it. I really do. And the kids are strong enough now. The kids are pretty good actors unto themselves these days. So I think you'll end up with a little bit like, what does it remind me of a bit now? Like Mrs. Brown's Boys? You know what I mean? That you've got actually the whole show is about the total mixture. Yeah, and his sister. So, you got to say that nobody is irreplaceable. I just was going to say, I found a new show that I've started to watch called Carter. Has anybody seen this? I used to like. Philman. What's his name? Now, hang on. Oh gosh, Castle. Yes, I used to watch Castle. Now there's a new program called Carter that is a bit like Castle, and and so it I like it when they do programs that make you chuckle a bit. You know what I mean? And it's good, clean fun. No, I'm not sure that it is, but it probably will be. Because it is fun to watch, and it's the storyline basically is about a Hollywood actor that used to play a detective, who now it becomes one. He goes back to his hometown for something and ends up helping to solve a case, and ends up by accident becoming a consulting detective to a police department. And so, but to me, it's just like you talk about, I don't know about you, but I like to see things that make me chuckle a bit. And I like mysteries, I always have. So I sort of enjoy that sort of mixture. But, there are so many, I think that how many of you remember when Netflix started? And we thought it was so magical. You could actually have a movie and rent it for as long as you wanted to, just for that one price, and you just returned it when you'd had enough, and it was just like, wow. And now, I look back at that evolution, and now, gosh, how do we live without Netflix or Hulu or whatever? And you're going, it's so magical to have lived through these times. I give thanks every day for having been able to witness it all. It's so exciting to me. It's like, what are they going to come up with next? What do you think? What do you think will be the next generation? We thought the Walkman was the be all and end all of life. We thought the boombox was pretty clever. You know what I mean? You look at it and you go, look how far we've come from there. And we thought that was it. We thought, well, the Walkman was the greatest thing since stripped potatoes, and there could never be anything better than that. And then, then we got a watch. I mean, you look at it, and I keep looking and thinking, what are they going to come up? Yes, I can remember going to Blockbuster. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, Now, now it's like, what do you mean? I don't know about you, but I really don't enjoy television anymore. I will wait for it to come out on Netflix or whatever so I can watch it without commercials. Am I the only one? It's like when I do every now and then I do watch something on television and I go, I can't. I've forgotten how many commercials there were, and I don't want them. Yes, Nicole, right. We went and got the VHS tapes from the rental shop. Now I can remember being in Africa, Nicole, and watching the whole of the original series of Dynasty or Dynasty, depending which country you're in. Um, you know, 3 tapes at a time. Yeah, we got a DVR to avoid to get rid of the commercials. Yes, I guess that is something I could do in my lifetime. Now, isn't that wonderful, Chip? You're saying that for you, the visit to the video store was a great memory. It was like going camping, all right? Um, it was a family outing. We all went, and were you allowed to pick your own movies? You probably got choices there as well, right? You were allowed to make your own decision. You imagine how that felt, Amy. Now, obviously, with some parental guidance. Jody's got so much. For those watching on the replay, Jody's just written that she had such a large late fee on The Little Mermaid that she was scared to take it back to the shop. So, yeah, and all our TV watching is now YouTube. Now, I must admit that yeah, I guess that's what I said. But it's an interesting thing, Amy, that I remember saying to a young person about 10 years ago. I remember saying to a young person, it is my belief that within the next 5 to 10 years, TV as we know it will not be in our lives. We will choose to watch what we want to watch on our computers, probably streamed into our television sets. But we actually will choose to watch what we want to watch when we want to watch it, but we'll do it via our computers. And this 17-year-old looked at me and you knew he was just going, old fart. Doesn't know what she's talking about. And I could see the look because I read body language pretty well. And I said, I know you don't believe me, but do me a favor. Have the character in 5 to 10 years' time, when you find that I am right, to phone me up and let me know that you were wrong. And I wasn't a stupid old fart. I was ahead of my time. Because I could see it being a reality. Yes, how many of you still want to, go back to the sea with Ariel? I'm still trying to work out how children can retain so much of a story on those Disney movies. To this day, I want to know how that is possible. How can they watch a 1.5 hour movie or whatever the time is and remember every name, every minor character, not even the major ones? Amazing. That is really interesting, Amy. You're a tarot and palm reader. Have you found that market is what I want to say. Have you found that has changed? Bye, Lolo. Good to see you. Always a pleasure to see you. Hugs to you, honey. And I say, has that market changed? Because I wonder. Hmm. Yeah, I'm saying about that because yeah, I find it fascinating. I love the fact that. So how do you, when you say you take to the street, how do you do that? Are you working fairs and stuff like that, or are you just literally taking to the street? Do you have a license to work on the street? It fascinates me because ah, but so you've learnt the lesson. Yeah, I think, you have to think about it, for a meal truck to serve meals, um, on the street, they need a license. So, I think, that is the whole thing, that you need to obey the laws around that if you can. My question is, do you read palms and do tarot from home? Yeah, do it the right way, honey, is what I'm saying. If you do it the right way, yeah, you miss it. I mean, I don't know about in the States, but here in Canada, so much more business is done from your home these days than it used to be. And so, it's like, I don't know if you are renting or whether you own, but it's like, you know, maybe you can just build a regular business like a normal person. Okay, so the environment isn't the proper place for that. Yeah. And it also, I think am I correct that it's a pretty seasonal thing, that there are times of the year that people get more into that sort of stuff? I would think, I don't know why, my sense is after Christmas, uh, summer for sure. How many of you have ever been to a palm reader or a tarot card reader? And I think, it's an interesting line of work. What do you do? What do you say to people who say you just imagine, just making things up? Yeah, it's very, something. Starting a small business today is very difficult if you're doing anything that is product related, because you're fighting against the Walmarts and things like that. I totally get that. But it's interesting because I think in a way, there will always be people that want affirmations of what's going to happen in their life when we really are not sure that it will. I did have an experience of it once, Amy, just so you know that I'm not unaware of the power of it. Um, I can remember talking to somebody once, and they were in my home, and I happened to have a tarot card deck that somebody had given me. And I just want to tell you my experience was that um, I actually turned a tarot card. I got them to turn the tarot card over because I'm a great believer in the correlation of the great collectiveness. And it was really interesting. And she was busy. She'd been busy telling me that she was really broke and da 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 and all that and the other. And she turned this card over, and it was the tree of life, I think it is called. I can't remember what the real name for it is. Anyway, but what I really realized when I was looking at this, it was about the roots. And that's what struck me when I turned it over was, look at the roots. And I said to her, "Have you got money stuck away somewhere that you've forgotten about?" And she said, "What?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "There's something about this root system that's making me feel that somewhere you planted some money and you've forgotten about it. You've got an insurance policy somewhere you've forgotten about, or you've got, a savings plan somewhere that you've forgotten about." And, you could see her whole face change, Amy. And she said, "You're right. I've just remembered da 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 da." And I said, "Oh, that's good." Now, my question is, um, did I make it up? So, and she said to me, "That's amazing. How did you do that?" I said, "I have no idea. I just know that you turned over a card, and with what I heard, do I think it's a coincidence that you turned that card over? No, I actually don't." And so to me, right. So that to me, I think there is a mix of things. You either have high intuition. What do you attribute your success, Amy? Oh, I know. I have very strong. Believe me. I always remember when I was doing a broadcast one day, Amy, and we have this very dear viewer of ours who lives in Scotland. And I remember doing that broadcast, and in the middle of the broadcast, I suddenly started to um, say to her, "Are you crying right now?" And and because I could feel her, and it's happened to me a number of times when I've been doing broadcasts and helping people. And I don't discount that. I think it's a gift. And so if you notice, that's why I asked you the question, what do you say to people who say you're just making it up? And what do you say to people who think that it's a load of whatever? I have to tell you something that, yeah, I think that's right. And to me, I am surprised. Oh, you stopped procrastinating about something, Becca. Great. What did you do? I'm very proud of you. I'm certain anybody that's procrastinating is very proud of you. Aren't we, Chip? One step at a time, Becca. That's all I keep trying to tell people is whatever you're procrastinating about, take one step. I know I have to make a couple of difficult telephone calls, and I have got the email because I realized talking to people on the phone now, because my hearing is going so much, is more difficult. So now I'm going to email them. Haven't done it yet, but at least I've got those ready. That's my task for next week, by the way. Well, I'm over time. Look at that. So I'm hoping that each of you have um, understood that just trying to take one step at a time is better than doing nothing. Let me just see what Becca said here. Oh, you have wow, that's exciting, Becca. You haven't given me permission to talk about that uh, publicly, so that's great, though. Well done. Are you a procrastinator? I'll get back to you on that one. Yeah, Jody, I know what you mean. No, but I know how much that is, Becca. I know that's a huge step. All right. And also in reality, Becca, that is correct, Amy. Um, uh, which bit? I think it's really important that you just take one step towards whatever it is you're trying to improve on. I'm not sure what I just said that you missed, quite honestly. Except congratulations, and that those of us who procrastinate know how difficult it is. Oh, yes, sorry. I wanted to know whether it was okay to repeat what you had done publicly. In other words, I don't want to. Yeah. The reason I'm saying that is because I don't necessarily, if something like that comes on the feed, I don't actually talk about attaching a name to it unless this person gives me permission, because um, when I do the replay, people aren't seeing the live stream. Yeah, just Amy, just put the live stream in the subject. And by the way, just know that I might not be able to get back to you on that email until maybe tomorrow or so, if I'm lucky. Oh, actually, tomorrow is my day off. Yeah, it's my me day. But I'll get back to you when I can. All right. I'm pretty good about getting back to people, and I will read it and I will get back to you. So if you don't hear from me within 48 hours, then check check with me on. If you haven't heard from me by the next broadcast, then check with me because I might not have got it. Okay? So, big hugs to everybody. I hope you got some value out of today's broadcast. Please remember that whatever it is we're trying to achieve in life, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's not that I want to put it up. I just wanted to read it. Okay, let me now read what Becca said. She just gave me permission. She said she was finally brave enough to post a comment on my current interest page instead of trying to talk via Messenger. He doesn't really use Messenger. Okay, so if the other thing is this, if I might give you that word of advice, Becca, is that if you don't get a reply, um, don't keep after it, right? Just understand that you did your bit. You're only responsible for your behavior. So if you put, you held out a hand and said, "Hello, it's me." If they choose not to extend a hand back to you, that doesn't mean you're a bad person or they don't like you. It's just, their stuff. And I think, the main thing is, Becca, give yourself 10 out of 10 for reaching out. That I know how difficult that is. How many of you remember how difficult that is? And so and particularly, with you, Becca, because I know that is very different. Right. Well, big hugs to you, Becca. Well done. Yeah, I totally relate to that. But here's the thing, Becca. There's a difference between reaching out and being clingy, right? And it's the being clingy that I used to be very bad at. What do you mean you're ignoring me? Forgive me, Becca. I'm just reliving my own experience because I used to think just because I wrote to them, they had to write back to me. Anyway, so big hugs to you. Well done. Congratulations to all of you who've taken a step forward. And let's keep doing that so that people get used to the fact we're going to be doing that on Friday lunchtime. I think it's really important. How many of you have noticed I keep taking another step forward in my process? I'm not rushing it. I'm just taking another step forward. I'm doing it at my speed. I don't care if anybody thinks that's too slow. I am doing what I can because I know emotionally this is very difficult for me. And so therefore, I need to do it at a speed that's not going to traumatize me. Does that make sense? And I am amazed. I'm literally starting to re-downsize things I've already downsized. I'm going, I can't believe I went through this cupboard once and it still looks like a mess, and I'm literally going through again. And, one shelf at a time works really well. How many of you need to have a look at your fridge this week and just go, let me just clean one shelf? Take everything out, clean the shelf, put everything back. I know, Nicole, that we have a different time zone. The good news, Nicole, is you can always watch the replay and you know how to get hold of me, right? If you've got any questions. And if you have a subject that you'd like me to talk about, you just let me know. I literally have a sort of list of things that people have asked me to talk about, and I'll talk about them in whatever way I think works for the majority of people, but I do normally try and get them in. Ah, you've got a very small fridge and a trailer. Okay. I know about those. What size trailer have you got? Yeah, that's pretty early in my day as well, Nicole. So, yes, thank you for that. By the way, where are you? That it's 5 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, you're in Asia somewhere? Oh, and for those of you who know Oz, I did actually hear from him. He is still alive. A 27-footer is a nice size. Yeah. I'm still thinking about possibly getting myself a very big fifth wheel. But I'm pretty sure that float home is high on my list at the moment, unless I find a perfect corner apartment. Yeah, Oz. I'm going to ask him why he hasn't been in to join us because he doesn't have any excuses anymore. I'm going to ask him that this week. All right, Jody, make a note, please. All right, so people, big hugs to you all. I've done nearly half an hour extra, but never mind. I hope some of you found some help in this one. I will chat to you again tonight at 7 o'clock for those of you who are there. I'm not sure what we're talking about tonight. I know I've got it written down somewhere, but I can't remember what it is. But I will put up a notice about it. Oh, it's big training, Amy. I want to tell you something. It's huge training to downsize. Yeah, that's a forced way of downsizing, isn't it? And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I want to make sure that I've downsized it pretty well before I have to actually downsize it. You know what I mean? My goal was to get rid of about half, and I'm doing pretty well on that. Every drawer. I actually literally took every drawer and said if I could only keep half, which half? And that helped me downsize by a half. I'm amazed at how much stuff has gone. And it's been a process over some months, but it really, I didn't, I did a cupboard and 2 drawers yesterday, and I've already done them once and I was amazed. I just found it really easy the second time just to go, yeah, I really don't need that. Yeah. Do I really need 3 bottle openers when I know I've already packed 2? It's like, really? I and I don't drink wine that often. 1 would probably be more than enough. This is DearMamaSal going, I hope some of you understand what I'm talking about. Big hugs, everybody. Remember to look after one another, as I know you all do. But please, please, please remember, look after yourself first. Make sure you give enough time to you before you give your time to other people, because so many of us need to actually spend some more time dealing with us. We cannot help ourselves by just helping other people. We need to help ourselves first. This is Dear Mama Sarah going, you're that special and you deserve it. Bye-bye for now.